Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast where today I'm being joined by Daniel from Autodesk. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Nice to be here with you.
Thank you very much. I mean, you've come all the way from Oslo, and I couldn't, help but take up this opportunity. Came on a train very quickly to try and make this podcast together on redefining architectural business models for a sustainable future. So just to kind of tell our listeners, I met Daniel in Oslo back a few months ago, and I saw him do a presentation, and it was like, wow, it was on Forma, I think it was. And it was just really impressive, and your kind of background of what you do. So if you don't mind, just giving us a bit of an introduction, who you are, what you do, how did you get to be here today in Autodesk doing all the amazing things you're doing today?
Absolutely. So my name is Daniel Gameiro. I'm the Autodesk Forma Community Manager. I'm also the global lead for the Young Professionals Network at Autodesk.
Wow.
And my background is architecture. I went to Norway to study zero emission buildings, ended up teaching classes on Revit and ArchiCAD, served as a BIM manager for 6 years. And what really got me was this massive impact on teaching others how to use tools, how can they go an extra step on the impact they are doing, not only in terms of architecture, but really helping the industry to move forward in the right direction. And I just got the opportunity to jump into a new challenge that was Spacemaker at the time. Very young, very talented startup. We were just a few people, very young and talented, and we all believed that we could change this industry, right?
Wow.
Completely naive. So we developed a cloud-based solution to enable outcome-based design, and this really got the attention of Autodesk. So no surprise, they reached out, and we went through a partnership. And to be honest, it couldn't be a better thing. I mean, throughout this process, I had multiple roles. I was a customer success manager. I did tech sales for 4 years. And now I've been helping out with community. So we want to build this new generation of architects that believe that we can change the way we work. We can design and build a better future. And it's all about creating the right framework to make that happen.
Yes. Wow, that's impressive. Background in architecture and BIM manager and having this, I suppose you wasn't naive. You had this real dream that you really just want to push the industry forward. And you're still living the dream almost, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was part of the value prop, right, that Autodesk realized. And so the acquisition came on. Spacemaker became Forma. It's the new AEC industry cloud. And Autodesk gave us this muscle on distributing like an extremely expensive technology to thousands of people, which is amazing. And with that comes a lot of responsibility because this really big company is betting the future of the whole AEC in Forma. So right now we are all about early stage architects and focus very much on buildings, but the long-term vision, which probably will take like 10 years, is to bring all phases, all stakeholders, all kinds of verticals into Forma. So from design to operations, it's a really big vision that we need to deliver on.
Yeah. Working together with like-minded individuals, I think, is what gets you the ability to kind of bounce ideas off each other and move things forward, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Being in the right environment and being with such an amazing company, Autodesk, who will back you in your ideas and be able to kind of push things forward is always great. So we're here today to talk about a personal thing that you've done away from your day-to-day, where you're talking about redefining. So the title of your article is Redefining Architectural Business Models for a Sustainable Future. And this is what we're here to talk about in more detail, because I read this article many, many times, not just because we're doing the podcast, but in order to understand what exactly your thought process is behind that. I think there's so much that we can learn from this short but sweet article. And I think my first question for you here is, can you elaborate on what you actually mean about the challenges that's associated with traditional hourly billing models within the field of architecture?
Absolutely. My life and friends, it's surrounded by architects and architecture. I really believe it's our responsibility to do better, but we have a lot of challenges, right? And I spent quite a lot of my time trying to understand how can we move the needle forward. And what I've learned is that design and engineering firms have typical profit margins of 5 to 9%, while real estate developers have between 25 and 29%, meaning between a 3x and a 5x. That's our massive numbers, and these numbers come from McKinsey. So I just feel like there is an enormous opportunity for architects to take part of that value pool, and that although we have this impressive working ethic, I really believe that if we want to change the industry for the better, we need to align values. We need to make sure that everyone is very much aligned. And that's where I believe that the traditional billing model does not serve the needs. I mean, it has done so for many years. We try to estimate basically how many hours a certain project will take. It's a fixed fee, low risk. Everyone understands what's on it. I mean, we know the challenges as well. When something goes wrong, we spend a lot of energy on understanding who was liable, who did the mistake. And I just feel like there is a massive opportunity to spend that energy elsewhere, right? What if we could align everyone's interests, all stakeholders' interests, so that we create a kind of win-win situation where everyone is taking, where we make the cake bigger, and everyone is taking a bigger slice of the pie. And I really believe we can even to design and build a better world while we do all of that.
Absolutely. I love that. You mentioned cake there, and it's nearly lunchtime, but there we go. I'm only joking. Okay, so brilliant. So, looking and focusing on the thing that surrounds us, we live in buildings, we are surrounded by great buildings, but trying to be more sustainable in the way that we are approaching our projects and trying to, as you say, you're using your energy in a better way. You're not using your energy kind of going over the things that drag you down on a project almost.
I think it all starts looking at the owner's interests, right? Yeah. What are our clients interested in? They want us to design and build very efficiently, quickly. They want us to do more sustainable projects because the community and their clients, the end user, is demanding it. They want very efficient buildings that require very little energy to be run. We also need lower emission buildings. And if we just think all about it, it's a massive challenge, and we need engineers and architects to be part of that solution. We are in the early stage, we are defining all the premises and the constraints where all of those buildings how those buildings will be designed and developed. So I really feel that we need to look into the value model. And my point is, what if architects and engineers would get a performance bonus on their compensation plan when such goals are accomplished, right? So we would align everyone's interests. I really believe on it. And I also think that the community, at the end of the day, our society needs us to be all aligned, rowing towards the same direction. And this is what we call the value-based business model. And such method entails risk, but also benefits. We need to share the whole pie. But it's just not wonders, right? There is a lot of difficulty when it comes to make this a reality. But I have some ideas about it.
Oh, exciting. So in terms of aligning everyone, there's an expression that's used in England where we say we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. You're almost trying to get everyone aligned in a way that they're not, we're learning from previous projects, but now to improve our new projects. And it's not something new. We're not reinventing the wheel, but your exciting ideas will help and how we can achieve such goals moving forward. Okay, so Daniel, you touched on the word risk there, and I can't resist but to ask you the question. there's an upfront risk for architects here. How are they meant to deal with such a thing?
The whole idea is that architect firms and engineer consultancy firms would get paid for what we believe they would be paid to cover their minimum expenses. But when it comes to the unknown, that would be something that we need to wait a bit. So everything that is related with key performance to performance KPIs, we would need to measure how those were accomplished a bit later on. So people wouldn't receive that fee just up front. We would need to be in a place where we can measure the performance of the buildings. And that's what I mean about the risk, because things can go wrong. Maybe the building never becomes to be, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, architects, I believe, need to be open to that. They need to share that risk with the real estate developers. And they are taking the bigger pie because they're actually the ones that are absorbing the whole risk right now.
Okay, so how can architects then align with contractors as well? You mentioned engineers, but then when we get the contractors on board, how can we kind of shift some of that risk away?
What I think we believe, it's a framework that allows us to agree on KPIs and agree on ways to measure those. And there is something that Not create. It's called the 4 E's of organizational performance. They are economy, efficiency, equity, and effectiveness. And I do believe these are the guidelines that can help us have a better discussion and a safe space to understand what we are trying to achieve as a team. Because at the end of the day, we must be a team if we are to have better outcomes than what we have done so far.
Okay, brilliant. Let's dive into the 4 E's then. The first E that you've mentioned there is about economy. Tell me a bit more about how that can help you out with value-based decisions.
So economy is all about analyzing construction and consultancy costs, project timelines, and post-construction revenue potential. And that's a big one. But again, we need to wait some years before we can see that. And architects need to be open to that.
Yeah. So by waiting, do you mean we need to be a bit more patient?
We need to be patient, and that revenue potential needs to be realized before we can collect that fee that we were part of realizing.
Perfect. And the second E is to do with efficiency. So now we've been a bit patient, we've had the cost side of things, but tell me a bit more of how we can become a bit more efficient.
So efficiency is about assess resource allocation and performance indicators like energy efficiency, net to gross ratio, total ownership costs, and we also need to have an independent design assessment. And those things can be a little bit hard, but if we can all agree on what great looks like, I'm sure we'll be able to do much better.
Absolutely. And the third one of the 4 E's is equity. So tell me a bit more about how this is to do with the demographics of the project.
This is a difficult one, right? I think equity means that we need to be able to measure inclusivity and outreach to the target demographics. So every time we develop something new, we need to understand that it comes with an impact to everyone that surrounds that development. We want to be a positive impact, and this is where we need to listen to the local communities to understand what they need, what are their needs, what are their struggles, and how this new development can contribute to be a positive factor on their development.
Super. And the final one is the effectiveness. So these are the kind of clear, precise outcomes and resource, and these are the values defined. So the fourth one being effectiveness. How can we measure that?
That's the difficult one, right? Because we need to evaluate the alignment between planned outcomes and real results, but we also need to factor unexpected things. Maybe there was a pandemic that no one was expecting, or a war, and how does that will impact the project is something that we need to reflect on from the very beginning, so that once that project is going on, we have the right premises and frameworks to understand how we can all develop the project in the same direction.
So it's almost like being agile, right?
Exactly.
Agile to the environment around you, natural or man-made disasters, that kind of thing. So trying to factor that in. But that must be very difficult. You must get a lot of reluctancy when you mention this to anyone, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
I think this needs to be a kind of step-by-step process, and we need to be able to bridge that with other industries that already have done it. This is not a new concept at all. When we look into, for example, sports or even sales, where I'm coming from, these industries already have in place a compensation plan that consists of two things. One that is the fixed, the base fee, plus a variable that, of course, it relates to the performance. So it's not a completely new thing. The way I see it is that we can start with a really big base to build that trust between the different stakeholders. And as we realize more and more value, we can make that variable, that piece of the pie that doesn't exist, but we all believe that it's there and its value, it's worth a lot of money, a bit bigger. But we need to take it slowly. We need to learn from this. I don't think we will figure it out the first way, try it out. And I'm not aware about some projects where this happened, but I'm sure there are some. And I would love to hear actually from our audience if they are aware of anything like this, so that we can create this discussion. I don't believe that it's about one person talking about it. This needs to be a whole industry discussion. How can we really realize this?
Brilliant. Involving the community, progress, let's work on it together.
Absolutely.
And that's the way that we should do. You know, taking this back to like it's a slightly different topic, you know, back in, I would say 2011. So I graduated from university in 2011. And during that time, there was a lot of discussion about let's share our models. Let's, you know, was working in Revit, share your model with me. You know, we need to kind of link in projects. And there was a reluctancy to do that sharing. It's almost like now that's second nature. We do that, but now we need to share the ideas. We need to kind of, you know, open up those doors and speak with people and have that free flow of communication in order to get what we need for our value-based performance. So Daniel, you know, from that little kind of collaboration technique, etc., how do you think that the architectural profession can foster this open collaboration with you know, stakeholders all over the industry?
I believe we can draw inspiration from the design industry. I'm thinking about Figma, this new tool, cloud-based, where all parties share their thoughts in real time, their ideas in real time, so that people can give feedback, and basically creating a platform where people can have an open discussion, data-driven, and with very clear goals where everyone agrees on what they need to do. Mm-hmm. So thinking about Figma, I believe we have other tools, and Forma is trying to do that, to open up that collaboration, the way we work. Revit has done an immense job, and we have BIM 360 where we are sharing all of those models. But what if we could see in real time what the other stakeholders are thinking about? What if instead of sending an email asking for feedback, those people were able to give the feedback in real time? And we have technical solutions already in place, but cloud brings a completely new opportunity. I don't think we have yet realized the full potential of it, but I do believe Figma is a great example how the whole industry can accelerate and create better outcomes just because of a better collaboration.
So tell us a bit more about Figma. You mentioned both Figma and Forma there. So for the listeners who are listening to this podcast, might just want to know a bit more on Figma. So you mentioned about collaboration and cloud. Is it a cloud solution?
It's a cloud solution where a designer is drafting some concepts and the client can be on the other side making comments. It's a little bit uncomfortable, you know, it's like you have someone looking over your shoulder, but the benefits are immense. They are tremendous. You don't need to wait for the next project meeting to make advancements. Throughout a week, you can go through hundreds of iterations loops. And once we are meeting, we are actually just formalizing what has been an ongoing collaboration on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Do you think, though, having that constant connectivity, and this is, you're not the first person for me to ask this question, so, you know, that constant connectivity, do you think it could also be a bad thing?
I think it's a scary thing. I don't believe we have the legal frameworks to make it a reality as of today. But I just believe that the upside outsizes completely the downside.
Ah, interesting. Very good. So, that constant connectivity with, like you say, the comments are ongoing, and you're able to kind of, like you say, you're not waiting. You can get the answers as soon as you can. But for me, what worries me is that the constant connectivity can also be a distraction. It's almost like working along and you have your mobile phone next to you and you've got a group chat going and it's not stopping. It's constantly talking to you and constantly pinging away. So it's almost like having this group chat in work and it's constantly going. So it distracts you from your main focus for the day. And I think that's the angle that I was trying to look at, from a different perspective. What would an end user actually feel like? You say it's a bit scary, but at the same time, we are capturing things and we are catching things before the next deadline, before the next group meeting. So in a way, that constant connectivity, like you say, outweighs the negativity of it. So yes, thanks for that, Daniel. Coming up next on Optimize et al. But why now? Why did we not have this discussion 10 years ago? Why is it now? Is it that the technology has developed that much in the last 10 years that we are at that situation where we can involve everyone via the cloud?
Absolutely. In the last 10 years, cloud solutions have increased dramatically in terms of performance. Right now, we can actually deal with high level of detail. We can run analysis on the cloud. We have AWS, like all of these different services that can enable us to just run extremely heavy simulations in the cloud. And we use our devices, laptops, mobile phones to look at the data. We don't necessarily need to have all of that powerful computing power in our devices. We can leverage the cloud, and that's only happening in the last 10 years. The real benefit of Forma is that we are enabling everyone, the common non-technical architect, to run real-time analysis on embodied carbon, sun, daylight. And to be data-driven, everyone needs to have access to that data. Not only the young generation, which I believe will be, of course, a big driver of this conversation, but we need absolutely everyone, including the planning authorities, to have access to this technology.
Do you have any key takeaways then for our audience today, or for our listeners today, in terms of best practice for architects who are looking to go down the route and explore and implement this value-based model that you talk about within your article? Do you have any specific examples that you'd like to share with us today on value-based models?
Think about football. The big stars, they have a really comprehensive compensation plan. Things in Europe, for example, is very relevant how many goals one scores if they go to the Champions League. If they win the Champions League, they would win a really fat bonus. But that's just the outcome, right? That's the end result. But it just aligns the player's interest with the club's interest. But what about how to achieve it, right? That's where we need the technology and the data so that we can develop the players in the right direction.
Where do you see the future for architectural practices? What's the big goal? What's the big aim? How can we shift moving forward? So the title of your article is Redefining Architectural Business Models for a Sustainable Future. And this is what we're here to talk about in more detail.
So we want to build this new generation of architects that believe that we can change the way we work, we can design and build a better future. And I spent quite a lot of my time trying to understand how can we move the needle forward. And what I've learned is that design and engineering firms have typical profit margins of 5 to 9%, while real estate developers have between 25 and 29%, meaning between a 3x and a 5x. That's our massive numbers, and these numbers come from McKinsey. So I just feel like there is an enormous opportunity for architects to take part of that value pool, and that although we have this impressive working ethic, I really believe that if we want to change the industry for the better, we need to align values.
So the article suggests a shift towards value-based business models. What are the key principles to a value-based model, such, in the context of architecture? Have you, or have anyone that you know, actually applied this value-based business model to a project?
As far as I know, there are some public projects that have a value-based model. I don't know all the details. I do believe it's mostly based on timelines, but I just feel like we are thinking too small about it. Just think about it. If an architect helps the owner to cut energy costs 50%, that's an immense value pool, right? That we can be tapping into. And that creates a better world, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I just feel like to be much bigger, we need to align those interests with what all the stakeholders require. And it cannot just be about timelines. I do believe they are part of the process. We need to think about the communities that live around us, the impact that development will have. We need to think about energy production, energy consumption. We need to think about embodied carbon. I mean, just on the embodied carbon, this is a really big challenge we have. The building industry, I think, is responsible for about 40% of the total emissions. And I just don't believe that the current business model serves that purpose. I don't believe we have the frameworks in place to accelerate that massive shift that we need, because we need to improve our subject matter expertise. Like, architects just need to relearn their way of working. They need to invest heavily on new tools. And where is all that money coming from? Like, we are sitting with such small margins. I just feel like if that is to become a reality, we need to rethink the way we are. We need to rethink our business models around those things.
And do you think then that we need to actually raise this? You say about kind of learning the way that we do architecture. Do you think that we should kind of just leave the generation kind of go as it is, but then enforce this from a younger perspective? So anyone graduating from college or anyone coming into the industry that enforces this? Or do you think everyone should get involved with it?
Everyone should get involved with it. The real benefit of Forma is that we are enabling everyone, the common non-technical architect, to run real-time analysis on embodied carbon, sun, daylight. And if we believe that we are to create a better world and a more sustainable world, we need to make sure that everyone that is sitting with responsibilities in a project has access to that data. Because when we are collaborating, quite often we see the problem from our own perspective, from our own interests. Quite often it's really hard to understand all the trade-offs. And that's why I believe when we have real-time collaboration in a cloud solution, we can all sit together as a team and understand the complexity of the whole problem. Maybe as a real estate developer, I'm open to do a bigger investment in terms of building costs because I understand that will save me X amount of pounds in terms of energy. It will have a much better, much more positive impact in the community. So it's about those trade-offs. And those discussions, they need to be data-driven. And to be data-driven, everyone needs to have access to that data. Not only the young generation, which I believe will be, of course, a big driver of this conversation, but we need absolutely everyone, including the planning authorities, to have access to this technology so that we can enforce better outcomes.
That's great. But why now? Why did we not have this discussion 10 years ago? Why is it now? Is it that the technology has developed that much in the last 10 years that we are at that situation where we can involve everyone via the cloud?
Absolutely. In the last 10 years, cloud solutions have increased dramatically in terms of performance. Right now, we can actually deal with high level of detail. We can run analysis on the cloud. We have AWS, like all of these different services that can enable us to just run extremely heavy simulations in the cloud. And we use our devices, laptops, mobile phones to look at the data. We don't necessarily need to have all of that powerful computing power in our devices. We can leverage the cloud. And that's only happening in the last 10 years. And it's not only that, but also the cost to drive such simulations has reduced dramatically. That's why I really believe right now, absolutely everyone can run such simulations. And this is really something we believed from the early days. We have incentivized our customers to run as many simulations as possible. Although every time they do it, we are paying for them, right? They don't come for free. Even students, they have free access to our software, and we want them to run as many analyses as possible. Because it's only when you go through that iteration loop over and over again, once we have tried a massive solution room, that you are confident that you have not left money out of the table, that you have not left a more sustainable outcome out of our consideration room. And that is really serious. We have a big responsibility. We have the technology, we have the agenda. We cannot ignore global warming anymore. So I just hope that we start all embracing all these new tools, ways of working, and starting this discussion, right? How are we doing this massive shift? We need an incredible investment from all parties, and we need to enable architects and engineers to do so.
Yes, involvement from all parties and getting the conversation going is the only way that we can push that forward. And as you say, the last 10 years, we've had a massive shift in technology, going from maybe mobile phones that you used to type on with buttons to now having a flat screen and things like that. And being able to have technology on site as well, and internet connectivity in much more kind of many more areas, even remote sites. So I think all of that has helped, like you say, with us to be able to look at things from a different perspective. And the more that you say to do with analysis, the more involvement you get from the entire industry, no matter which level they're at. I think that has contributed significantly to the way that we can see that data. And like you say, the more people involved, the more data you get, the more analysis you get out of it. And that's only going to help us move forward to step away from all this and not to contribute more to global warming. Great perspective on that. Do you have any key takeaways then for our audience today, or for our listeners today, in terms of best practice for architects who are looking to go down the route and explore and implement this value-based model that you talk about within your article?
Sure. I think we need to start small. We need to agree on one goal, maybe, that we all want to achieve. Embodied carbon and energy production consumption, I believe, are a great place to start. We have the tools right now to measure them. They are clear enough that we don't need to have a massive discussion around it. And if we start there, rewarding the architects, engineers for the work they are doing to optimize those outcomes, I believe we are already starting with the right foot.
Brilliant. That's really great to hear. That in itself is inspiring me. So I have no idea what to do for our listeners. It's really great stuff. Do you have, so we're getting very close now to the end of this podcast, but I just want to ask you a couple of questions on, the future. So before we get to the future, do you have any specific examples that you'd like to share with us today on value-based models?
So let's now think maybe about football. I'm from Portugal. I love football. Okay. I'm grown up with that. Thinking about football, the big stars, they have a really comprehensive compensation plan. Things in Europe, for example, it's very relevant how many goals one scores if they go to the Champions League. If they win the Champions League, they would win a really fat bonus. But that's just the outcome, right? That's the end result. But it just aligns the player's interest with the club's interest. But what about how to achieve it, right? That's where we need the technology and the data so that we can develop the players in the right direction. There is like all of these different wearables that players are using right now. They know exactly how many kilometers they run, what was their heartbeat at a certain point. And that just informs them what kind of training they need to do, where their weaknesses and strengths are, and they can evolve as a team, right? I do believe that it's always about understanding holistically where we want to go and what is the best strategy that serves everyone. And ultimately, we will be able to achieve those end goals. Then we will be in the champions, or we will win the champions. Everyone will be happy. There is a fat big bonus for everyone, but we just need the whole framework to be in place. And I do believe technology and data-driven frameworks are the way to go there.
It's a great perspective to look at it from, football, because everyone can kind of relate to that. Everyone has seen a football match at some point, and the way that, like you say, the data can now drive whether or not someone is running in a loop, how long, stop running in a loop. The data's telling us you're running too much excessively, and by the end of the match, you're burnt out, we need to kind of conserve that energy. And we can relate it to the way that technology works within the architectural industry, because, you've got architects running around doing all sorts of things at the start of the project, but maybe we need to prolong that process. Maybe we need to look at the data, digest it, and then be agile to what the data tell us and redo part of our design moving forward. I really like that kind of perspective of it. Now, on to our last question, Daniel. And it's been a really insightful podcast for me personally, so I'm hoping our listeners as well. Where do you see the future for architectural practices? What's the big goal? What's the big aim? How can we shift and moving forward?
I think the future is all about breaking silos, creating multidisciplinary teams with really broad knowledge, and creating the tools that enable insights to be shared across multiple stakeholders. We need the people with the technical background that can go very deep in a specific topic, but we also need to enable those insights to be shared at a level that everyone is able to understand the why. Why did this building turn up the way it is? And this goes not when it comes to the direct people involved in that project, but also indirectly. The planning authorities, the municipalities, the communities around. I do believe when we have a more transparent and open dialogue, we can create better outcomes. And I really hope that architecture studios are rethinking the way they have been structured so far. I hope that we see the space for more partnerships where we don't think that we need to win this industry alone. We can partner up, we can do more as a team, and we need more knowledge. But we also need a business model that can serve that end. And I would love to invite everyone to read that article, but also to comment it, to start the discussions with their colleagues, because I think that's the right way to go forward. The future is about us. We are accountable to make it happen, and we need that discussion to take place today.
Yes. And the article is available on LinkedIn. Is it available on any other platform?
It's only available in LinkedIn, but let's just start there. And I hope that people take it over, that they write a version 2 or version 3. I don't own this idea. I want this idea to be explored, to be taken apart, to evolve, but we just need to make it happen.
Absolutely. And everyone has a duty in this. Everyone needs to get involved. I love that. Break the boundaries, open up the doors, bring everyone to the table. Let's all get involved. And it's, no idea is a final idea. We are continually developing, and we have to stay agile to the climate, the market, and the way that the industry is heading. Really great points. Do you have any final comments or thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with today?
I define myself as a pragmatic dreamer, and I would love to see more of that in the industry. We have so many challenges, but I also believe we are living in a very special moment. We have a massive opportunity just in front of us, and we need to take the risk to seize it. That's what I would love people to think about. How in this moment where we have generative design, we have so many new things happening, how can we seize this opportunity for a better outcome?
Incredible. Capture the moment, grab what you've got. Technology is there, technology is key, and just kind of utilize what has been developed. Everything's been developed to this stage for a purpose, and now it's up to us to take it on board. We are all responsible, as you said within the podcast. The more kind of duties we have, the more responsibility we get, and we are responsible for the future generations. We need to make sure we're leaving a better planet for the next generation and those that follow. So I think it's incredible insight and very, very incredibly inspirational, Daniel, for me to listen to. So the article that we've been discussing today is Redefining Architectural Business Models for a Sustainable Future. I really would like to thank you for your time and for coming all the way from Oslo to London to do this podcast together. And it's been an incredible journey for me, and I hope it has been for you as well.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I look forward to see you all in the next podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
But why now? Why did we not have this discussion 10 years ago? Why is it now? Is it that the technology has developed that much in the last 10 years that we are at that situation where we can involve everyone via the cloud?
Absolutely. In the last 10 years, cloud solutions have increased dramatically in terms of performance. Right now, we can actually deal with high level of detail. We can run analysis on the cloud. We have AWS, like all of these different services that can enable us to just run extremely heavy simulations in the cloud. And we use our devices, laptops, mobile phones to look at the data. We don't necessarily need to have all of that powerful computing power in our devices. We can leverage the cloud, and that's only happening in the last 10 years. The real benefit of Forma is that we are enabling everyone, the common non-technical architect, to run real-time analysis on embodied carbon, sun, daylight. And to be data-driven, everyone needs to have access to that data. Not only the young generation, which I believe will be, of course, a big driver of this conversation, but we need absolutely everyone, including the planning authorities, to have access to this technology.
Do you have any key takeaways then for our audience today, or for our listeners today, in terms of best practice for architects who are looking to go down the route and explore and implement this value-based model that you talk about within your article? Do you have any specific examples that you'd like to share with us today on value-based models?
Think about football. The big stars, they have a really comprehensive compensation plan. Things in Europe, for example, is very relevant how many goals one scores if they go to the Champions League. If they win the Champions League, they would win a really fat bonus. But that's just the outcome, right? That's the end result. But it just aligns the player's interest with the club's interest. But what about how to achieve it, right? That's where we need the technology and the data so that we can develop the players in the right direction.
Where do you see the future for architectural practices? What's the big goal? What's the big aim? How can we shift moving forward?